What happens when a determined homeowner turns a battle against the HOA into a colorful spectacle of community spirit? Sometimes, chaos and karaoke can break even the toughest of barriers. Hey there, Porch Patrol Squad. Let me know if you've ever locked horns with a Karen like in today's story. Smash that like button and spill the tea in the comments. And if you're craving more outrageous HOA battles, make sure to subscribe and ring that notification bell. Believe me, you don't want to miss how this unfolds. Suddenly, my victory wasn't merely the thrilling spectacle of chickens darting around. It came down to the transformative energy coursing through the neighborhood. Where once there was a rigid hierarchy presided over by Karen, now sat the gleeful chaos of a community beginning to unravel those tattered threads of elitism. As the sun dipped lower, the vibrant atmosphere felt electric, and I knew this was merely the beginning. Whispers of the Great Chicken Affair began circulating like the delicious aroma of a barbecue, the kind that inflates your spirits and insists you set aside the weight of adult responsibilities as laughter permeated the air. I chuckled softly, envisioning future generations recounting tales of an unforgettable neighborhood uprising, sparked by a couple of runaway hens and a spicy dose of unexpected unity. In the days that followed, the feeling of empowerment hung in the air like leftover confetti from a long-awaited holiday celebration. Karen hadn't just cracked a smile. She had rolled up her sleeves and jumped into the chaos, albeit with wobbly grace. The neighborhood's Facebook page, once a vanity platform for her unsolicited opinions, turned into a jovial discussion space where homeowners shared their chicken heaven inspirations and laughed about their escapades. I sat back and watched in bewilderment as Karen's hawkish eye transformed, no longer just scrutinizing lawn care, but rather participating in spontaneous discussions about backyard agriculture. "Maybe I should adopt a goat next," she quipped in one post, and I could barely contain my snorts of laughter, proudly proclaiming victory over stubborn societal norms. One sunny Saturday, buoyed by the recent success, I decided to expand on our newfound chicken camaraderie with a community barbecue, one dedicated exclusively to feathered friends and neighborhood pride. I approached Marcus, a mad planner in his own right, as he tinkered with the garden. Imagine it, cluck and cook off. Who can resist competing over best chicken recipe while our beloved birds bask in the sun? He looked at me with his impossibly warm smile, eyes twinkling with mirth, and without a moment's hesitation, he jumped on board. Armed with the latest culinary creations from the neighbors' kitchens, I became a sergeant of sorts, rallying spirits, fostering creativity, and recruiting both champions of cuisine and timid souls willing to go where they'd never dared before. The morning of the barbecue dawned bright and cheerful, the aroma of grilled vegetables kissing the sunny air while laughter bubbled like soda in ice. Neighbors meandered in, many with their own sun hats or chicken-themed aprons, inspired by an impulse born from the wild spirit of our last gathering. And there was Karen, of course, humming a little too proudly in her pastel yellow apron studded with adorable hen motifs. "Jazz, I've crafted a recipe called Hen in the Garden, and believe me, it's to die for," she exclaimed, tapping me in a conspiratorial fashion. I froze for a split second, half amused and half wary of what had become of my sworn enemy. Had she truly become an ally? What madness had our little chicken caper wrought? Midway through the event, as I danced between tables dodging potato salad and someone's ill-fated attempt at a chicko-hawk, I caught sight of an emotional sight unfolding. Karen, with the neighborhood children, guiding them as they painted cardboard signs showing "Chickens are friends." A tide of nostalgia washed over me, thinking of my own youthful days spent stretching the boundaries of creativity and having fun within a world riddled with petty squabbles and conformity. I gathered with Marcus on the sidelines, watching our neighbors unite over laughter and shared purpose instead of branding each other with judgment or stereotypes. If only we could grill up this kind of unity every day, he mused, and I couldn't help but nod as I raised my cup to the universe, hoping to capture this essence in a jar for future generations. Yet as the festivities unfolded majestically, Karen approached me, a devious glint in her eye, the kind that reminded me of the hawk circling above, always searching for prey. So, Jas, I believe we have some unfinished business, she began, smirking. My heart jumped, unsure how this seasoned dispute veteran might approach the new camaraderie. I propose a final competition, a clash of the titans, you could say. A chicken-themed costume contest. The laughter that erupted from everywhere filled the air as the neighbors erupted in approval. Let's see who can truly embody their inner chicken, she declared, adjustments to her blouse made with conviction. My competitive spirit ignited. How could I resist? I mused at the absurdity of Karen encouraging this hijinks, switching from villain to the enthusiastic mastermind. As the call to arms echoed through the neighborhood, I felt a delightful mix of energy and mischief coursing through me. How fitting it was to acknowledge that the chaos of the chickens had unbound our local community in ways I had only daydreamed about. With a sly smile, I thought about what costume magnificence I would conjure up. This wasn't just a contest, but a symbol. A symbolic feather in our cap. After all, who knew a little lighthearted rivalry could make our lives far over their perceived value? What kind of delightful shenanigans awaited me as I embarked on this challenge with my old nemesis turned temporary comrade? Only time would tell as we dove headfirst into the silliness ahead. The much-anticipated day of the chicken-themed costume contest arrived like a fawn on awkward legs, a bit clumsy but undeniably charming. The neighborhood buzzed with excitement, rivalry forming as fiercely as the summer sun blazed overhead. Karen had unleashed the wildest of her inner child, whipping up a wave of enthusiasm that enveloped even the most skeptical of neighbors. As I peered out of my front window, I saw a parade of characters, fluffy chicks with feathers sticking out at all the wrong angles, a dad embodying a proud rooster with a makeshift crown that would have made King Henry jealous, and kids clad in oversized chicken suits that seemed to engulf them whole. If anyone had told me a month ago that I'd find myself in this ridiculous chicken-themed utopia, I would have laughed, probably while rolling my eyes. Oh, how the tables had turned! I decided to go big, or go home, tossing aside the fashionable doubts that waved at me like Karen's judgmental tennis skirt. If you're gonna be a chicken, be the chicken, I declared to Marcus, whose enthusiasm rapidly devolved into suppressed laughter as he watched me frantically attach yards of sequined fabric to my costume. In my mind's eye, I was transforming into the dazzling diva of poultry, a chicken vixen, if you will. I rummaged through the craft box, leftovers from last Halloween, determined to make it both fabulous and comically absurd. By the time the sky shimmered in golden hues, I stood in front of the mirror, channeling my inner foul queen, sparkling as brilliantly as a disco ball at a 70s party. Just as I struck a pose, my phone buzzed with a text from Karen. Just because you look fabulous doesn't mean you'll win. Oh dear. It seemed tensions were soaring higher than my sequined feathers. As the contest kicked off, the yard was transformed into an arena of laughter, joyous chaos filling the air. Children darted around, cocktailing their giggles with an infectious energy that set the mood ablaze. The sight of the chickens parading like dubious runway models brought tears of laughter to my eyes. Marcus, the proud husband and forever supportive audience member, always igniting the crowd with his cheers, gleefully held the dubious title of Best Chicken Dad next to an uproarious neighbor flexing an inflatable chicken costume that flapped around like a confused bird attempting flight. It was glorious. Meanwhile, Karen, still playing her rival part to perfection, strutted around in her pristine, glittery egg-themed outfit that would have made even a Broadway star envious. Oh, how the irony of this competition spun! The contest judge, an adorable elderly woman with twinkly eyes, announced, "Let's kick off the parade! Participants, take your places!" My heart raced. I could feel the weight of expectations pressing down like an unexpected summer storm. The crowd's applause crescendoed as I began my strut, my sequined costume catching the sun in the most obnoxious, fabulous way possible. I imagined the feathers glowing like 1,000 fireflies, gasping for attention. The energy was tactically intoxicating as I exhibited a series of exaggerated chicken dismounts. I had transformed into a version of foul elegance, strutting the walkway like it was a runway on a reality show about poultry royalty. Just when I felt on top of my chicken game, Karen strutted up next, her swan song brilliant, layering charming glances and delightful chicken flaps over a highly stylized rendition of the classic chicken dance. The crowd erupted in laughter and cheer, each clap laced with camaraderie. There we stood, a veritable chicken battleground of feathers and sparkle, competing for neighborhood glory amidst the unforgettable laughter that had melted the barriers of petty rivalries. As we both took the stage for the final showdown, Karen broke tradition with an unexpected twist of fate, a believe-it-or-not duet with me, as we inexplicably found ourselves embracing the celebrated chick dance. Encouraged by the absolute absurdity of it all, we transformed the competition into an epic mashup of unity, fingers snapping in sync, cheers ringing as neighbors joined the battalion of clucking delight. Ultimately, amid the jubilant chaos, it didn't matter who would take home the prized crown of neighborhood chicken champ. The contentment settled deeper like a cozy blanket of joy, reminding us all of the ridiculous barriers we had shattered in our feathered follies. As the judgment drew near, the elderly judge squinted at us through giggles, tears forming as she proclaimed, "Ladies, tonight you both win. You've reminded us that life is indeed a poultry fest, and the best recipe is laughter." I blinked in disbelief, glancing at a ridiculously gleeful Karen, hugging her oversized rubber chicken. Oh, the cosmic joke that had turned an uptight warrior into my most absurd yet beloved rival. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky with hues of celebration, I felt an overwhelming sense of accomplishment. The chicken theme had proven far more than just an event. It became a whimsical documentary of unity, overcoming adversity through laughter, serrated with a sprinkling of ridiculousness. The story of Karen and me, once enemies, now chicken compatriots, would live on, vividly danced in the memories of our quirky neighbors. I turned to Marcus, victory dancing in a fashion that would make any chicken proud, and told him, "This is only the beginning." For who knew what delightful madness awaited us next? Yes, indeed, this was a home where we never lost our sense of community behind absurdity. It was supposed to be a lovely Saturday, an opportunity to tend to my flourishing petunias without a care in the world, until Karen Delaney decided to plop herself down on my doorstep like a bad penny that wouldn't flip away. With her arms crossed and that infamous lip purse of hers, she looked more like a hawk ready to swoop down on the unsuspecting field mouse that was my peaceful weekend. "You do know," she started, her voice sharper than the shears I was using for my garden, "that your husband's presence lowers property values around here." I could hardly keep my jaw from hitting the azaleas. Did she really think Marcus, with his boundless charm and DIY spirit, was any kind of reason for a decline? Whatever Karen was smoking, I wanted none of it. Instead, I simply smiled, not with actual cheerfulness, but with the gritted teeth of someone who had just been handed a fresh dose of motivation. Over the next few days, while Marcus worked on his latest project, a tire swing for the neighborhood kids, because who wouldn't want some cheerful, flailing chaos in their lives? I began plotting my softly simmering retaliation against Karen. It was as if she had handed me a golden opportunity, wrapped in festively bad taste. I could just paint over my petunias and hit her with the protest of 1,000 rainbow-colored flowers, but that just wouldn't do. Oh no, this had to be something delicious, something torched with artistic flair. It was time to let my inner diva out, channel that energy, and send a message that kindness and understanding could defeat her clutches of entitlement. After all, who said I couldn't have a little fun while fighting back? My first step was quite innocent. I decided to renovate our yard into a whimsical wonderland. I purchased the silliest lawn ornaments I could find, inflatable flamingos, a disco ball for that classy touch, and a wind chime made from what looked like spoon forks. While Marcus watched with that puzzled smile of his, bless him, he only ever rolls his eyes a touch when I go full-on carnival, I could see the humor in weaving my small revenge web. But my pièce de résistance, a sign right at the property line that read "Welcome to Funky Town, HOA approved." Oh, Karen would have a field day with this. I envisioned her hawkish eyes bulging as she marched back over, her tightly wound attitude unraveling like a spool of yarn in a room full of kittens. As I plopped down on our porch, a glass of sweet iced tea in hand and wearing my favorite bright top, I watched for her. It didn't take long for her to appear, storming over with her signature pencil skirt rustling ominously as if it held secrets of the universe. She leapt straight into furious critique, her gestures wrapping around her disapproval like a boa constrictor, tightening its grip around a hapless victim. "This is not in line with the HOA standards. What will the neighbors think?" she brayed, her narrowed eyes shooting daggers at my glittering disco ball. I barely suppressed a chuckle at the absurdity of it all. "Oh, Karen," I said, feigning shock. "But you've advocated for community expression before, haven't you? This is just my interpretation." Her face was a mix of horror and bewilderment, and watching her flounder was the most glorious entertainment I'd had in ages. Now, the final stage of my plan unfolded, a neighborhood potluck, organized with a carefully crafted flyer that invited the entire block to celebrate diversity and community spirit, of which Karen would be made to participate in, rather than yuck it up on the sidelines. I wanted her to see just how many people appreciated Marcus's presence, how they enjoyed his creative touch, and most importantly, how much they would rally around a simply amusing cause. As the potluck day approached, I kept telling myself that it was a no haters allowed zone, and if Karen showed, which she inevitably would, it would be her trial by laughter. The night of the gathering, our backyard burst forth with food, laughter, and the sounds of questionable karaoke. I spotted Karen at the edge of the yard, her arms folded tightly, a beacon of ire among our jovial crowd. But then, something delightful happened. Easton, my neighbor's 5-year-old, spied Karen and, reveling in a triumphant way known only to children, dropped his cupcake and dashed into her direction. "You need a party hat, Miss Karen," he shouted, grabbing an oversized clown hat from the nearby table and plopping it atop her perfectly styled hair. The backyard erupted in laughter, and for a moment, even Karen seemed startled out of her judgmental shell. What followed was delightful chaos. Balloons popped, kids ran amok, and somewhere between bites of fluffy cake and toe-tapping music, even Karen found herself holding one of the inflatable flamingos for a photo op. The moment felt cathartic. I watched as the tension unraveled from Karen's stiff character, like a poorly constructed piñata, spilling colorful candy everywhere. That day, the neighborhood rallied not just around food, but against the absurdity of harboring prejudiced, outdated beliefs. I caught Marcus's eye, and we both shared a knowing grin. Sure, maybe I was a tad petty, but I'd also brought our community closer together, and I felt lighter than air. Lower property values? I thought, as I absent-mindedly twirled around beneath a cascade of cheerful balloons. More like raising property values of excellent human spirit. Who knew that the path to vindication could be paved with inflatable flamingos and an oversized party hat? What joy would unravel in the wake of such hilarity next? As the laughter erupted, I looked over at Karen, who had unwittingly transformed from the quintessential community enforcer into an unlikely party participant. With that clown hat precariously perched on her head, the sharp lines of her disapproval started softening, merging with the beats of our neighborhood's laughter. I dared to dream that maybe, just maybe, she could let go of her tightly wound disposition, if only for one evening. I was giddy with delight as I sauntered over, armed with a plate of cookies and the most radiant grin I could muster. "You look fabulous with that hat, Karen. It really makes your outfit pop," I exclaimed with exaggerated enthusiasm. She blinked at me, her hawkish eyes narrowing as she searched for the hidden malice in my compliment. Yet all she found was a genuine smile, a weapon she wasn't adequately equipped to handle. Emboldened by the collective joy radiating through our backyard, I couldn't help but press further. "You know what they say. Life is too short to take yourself seriously. Why don't you join us for karaoke? I hear you're a fabulous singer." I winked, relishing the invitation, and the way her face turned a shade of crimson that almost matched the cherry tomatoes strung up as decoration. Despite her attempts to retreat into the safety of her disapproval, I put an exaggerated arm around her shoulder, pulling her into the lively chaos. "Come on, let's show these folks how it's done." What I really wanted to do was bring her into the fold, to shatter the rigid walls she had built around her ever-displeased spirit. And in doing so, I might just create a tiny rift in her armor for compassion to slip through. But just as I thought victory was within grasp, a lopsided argument broke out amongst a couple of our rowdier neighbors over whether Sweet Caroline or Don't Stop Believin' was the superior sing-along classic. With popcorn spilled everywhere and dogs barking in delight, the debacle drew an eager audience, not unlike a day in Congress, but with slightly less decorum and a lot more jelly beans involved. I needed to steer things back. This was about community spirit, not shoddy musical taste. Climbing onto a nearby picnic table, I seized the moment. Ladies and gentlemen, while I appreciate the passion behind this historical debate, I must insist we unite in song. Let's channel that competitive spirit, and let sweet melodious harmony reign supreme. My voice rose above the playful chaos, desperately imploring my neighbors to join me for an ultimate karaoke showdown. The moment took on a life of its own. Underneath the threadbare stars, folks stumbled forward, either grinning sheepishly or with outright bravado, ready to unleash their talents or lack thereof. As Sweet Caroline rang out amidst off-pitch notes and the occasional bashful laugh, I turned towards Karen, who still appeared physically incapable of joining in, yet the corners of her mouth began to betray her steely nature. Perhaps the combination of encouragement and nonsensical lyrics could coax out a hint of laughter. A daring thought crossed my mind. What if I could get her to sing? I nudged her forward, while still straddling my picnic table. You know, Karen, you'd absolutely light up the stage. Everyone loves a surprise performance. You may own the wah, but I bet you can own living on a prayer too. In my heart, I could hear the chants of redemption chiming. Would she finally show a side of herself we hadn't seen before? With hesitant shuffles and furtive glances, Karen finally teetered towards my makeshift stage, glancing nervously at the neighbors who had taken to their roles enthusiastically, swaying like a chorus line on an impromptu Broadway night. I probably looked ridiculous just then, beaming at her encouragement, but it felt right to show her that humor and community mattered more than her tight-lipped stance. As the chorus of Bon Jovi filled the yard, I grabbed the mic and began to belt out the first lines of the iconic anthem. Impossibly caught in the moment, I grabbed her hand and pulled her in. The crowd went wild. Come on, Karen. Just try it. Before I knew it, the icy grip of her insistence to keep everything proper transformed alongside her hesitant notes into a gleeful chorus. Laughter melded with off-key singing as she joined the effort, and with every moment the tension evaporated like the steam from my favorite brew on a cold day. The crowd really rallied around us, shouted lyrics, and cheered amidst laughs. Even Marcus couldn't suppress his joy, laughing like a warm embrace from an old friend. By the time our rendition of the song ended, Karen's laughter mingled with ours, and for the first time, I finally saw her hawkish demeanor falter, a glimpse of life re-emerging into the rigid rules she had placed around herself. Standing there, I couldn't help but feel that my plan had done more than just fling banana peels in the direction of her entitlement. It ignited something in her, a sense of belonging. As Karen waved for the mic, I grinned widely. She looked colorful beneath the party lights, carrying the glow of acceptance like a warm glow around her. Okay, folks, she cleared her throat, nearly jovial now. I may be a rule follower, but I might not mind a bit of chaos here and there. The crowd roared in approval, and suddenly none of us were just homeowners. We were weave spies in this crazy tapestry of humanity, slowly but surely learning that a little kindness and chickens could transform the very essence of our community. What more delightful surprises awaited on the horizon? As our karaoke soiree wound down, a wave of exuberance had swept through the crowd, energizing even the most stoic of neighbors. I could hardly believe my eyes as Karen, the reigning queen of propriety, stood before us waving her hands like a jubilant conductor. The residents of our enigmatic HOA harmonizing with a symphony of off-key exuberance. Who knew the woman who shushed my dog's barking could outdo the best of us? I whispered to Marcus, who winked back at me like a supportive partner in a heist gone terribly right. The lawn was littered with half-empty cans of soda and a few rogue jelly beans, remnants of our spirited evening. Yet in that glorious moment, the laughter drowned out any mess. We had turned the once stagnant community right side up, and I felt ready to push further into this vein of grotesque joy. The following morning, with sunlight spilling into our living room, I still buzzed from the night before. My newfound feathered neighbors squawked energetically from their coop, an ominous reminder of my commitment to ruffle the feathers of suburban monotony. Over breakfast, I popped into our communal family chat. "Anyone up for a Clucktopia talent show?" I typed, half expecting my colleagues to roll their eyes at yet another charmingly absurd idea. To my surprise, the responses flowed back faster than Karen could complain about a dog park. "I can juggle. Bring your karaoke machine. I'm working on my opera singing." Marcus laughed, shaking his head. "You're really pulling us all together, huh?" The walls of entitlement were crumbling, and I was here, wheelbarrow full of laughter in hand, carting everyone into fun. But as we meticulously organized our budding talent show, I couldn't help but feel a twinge of rivalry rising up within me, mostly towards the curly-haired commando of conformity herself. After last night, I had gotten a taste of sweet victory, yet I sensed a scuffle more intense than karaoke awaited. What if I pitched our event to the HOA as a community initiative? I wondered aloud, catching Marcus mid-coffee sip. He nearly choked. "Jess? You mean their prized possession? The very order that Karen has clutched with those hawkish hands," he teased. I shrugged, a mischievous smile widening on my face. "If we're going to create a smiling neighborhood, we'll require their blessing. And who better than Karen to be the bridge? I mean, we've already seen her sing." I grinned. A showdown of epic proportions awaited. Later that afternoon, I maneuvered around the neighborhood Dickens while mustering a plan. Walking to Karen's meticulously weed-free garden felt oddly like wandering through a minefield. One wrong step, and boom. This experiment could blow up in my face, along with my social standing. But the glimmering hope of reform danced like dandelion fluff in my mind. I knocked on her door, bracing myself for whatever dismissal awaited. I was met with the clatter of metal, perhaps Karen's over-prepped VBA for who's at the door. When she finally appeared, in her perfectly ironed blouse, I had an inkling that she was still riding the high of last night's escapade. "Good afternoon, Karen," I chirped, flashing the brightest smile I could muster. "May I come in? We need to talk about Clucktopia." Her eyes narrowed just perceptibly, the hawkish demeanor suggesting she was ready to shoot down my enthusiasm with a flurry of statistics about neighborhood safety. Instead, she bore a quizzical expression. "A talent show?" she echoed rather than asked. Swallowing the panic building in my throat, I rallied forth like a saleswoman in a closing pitch. "It's a way to unite our community, to showcase our unique talents and maybe connect on a level beyond property values," I offered, injecting visible vigor into each word. And I, for one, ducked my way past the HOA barricades just to keep the spirit alive. The silence in her demurely decorated living room felt like a tropical storm brewing. "You think my house is just time for fun?" Karen's voice wobbled somewhere between offense and disbelief. This was my chance. A golden moment to shatter her rigid views like glass beneath festive laughter. "Not just yours. We could all benefit, including you. Imagine the influx of joy lowering the walls of entitlement. Plus, less uptight living means happier property values," I exclaimed, half expecting her to dart back inside to grab a graph mapping the local real estate's decline after my husband set foot in the neighborhood. And yet, she hesitated, clasping her hands under her chin. "Fine," she said, the defiance slipping from her voice. "If it's an official HOA-sanctioned event, I can consider a preliminary endorsement." The kitchen filled with a sort of harmony I had never expected. There it was, a softening of that steely exterior, an invitation to join in make-believe chaos. Wonderful, I nearly squealed. But just then, the universe threw a curveball. From the window, I heard a cacophony of squawks and clucks that threw our makeshift piece into disarray. The girls had found their way out and were now conducting a merry parade through the neighborhood. Nothing screamed community spirit like chickens on the loose. "Oh, darling," Karen inevitably huffed, brushing past me like a gust of wind headed for the main event. Now I see why Clucktopia is relevant. I grinned like a Cheshire cat as the stakes rose higher. Who knew disaster could so swiftly transform into the best kind of drama? The front doors swung open wide to a lively performance as Karen darted outside, joining the feathery chaos. As excited neighbors gathered, I felt a spark of glee rise within me. We were in this together now, chickens, laughter, and all. Maybe it wouldn't just be a neighborhood, but a community evolving towards something quirky, chaotic, and most importantly, joyful. And if Karen could survive this, wouldn't there be hope for all of us? What's next in our poultry-powered campaign? Would we raise an anthem of harmony or a storm of shenanigans? As I watched Karen wade into the frenzy of flapping feathers, I couldn't help but quirk an eyebrow at the irony of it all. The Queen of Order was now knee-deep in chaos, coordinating an impromptu chicken chase with about as much grace as a giraffe on roller skates. Neighbors who once offered her the first pick of lawn decorations were now clutching their ribs, cackling at the sight. "There she goes! Watch out, she's going in for the catch," I shouted, half charmed and half terrified for my prized poultry. Never had I thought we would see the day Karen might play mascot for the runaway chicken brigade, but desperate times called for desperate measures, and it was all pure entertainment delivered on a silken platter of irony. Yet Karen wasn't just any ordinary participant in this feathered fiasco. Oh no, she was determined to impose some level of decorum on this wild escapade. "You all need to form a line. Back up. Watch the organization," she barked, throwing impossible orders over her shoulder as she tried to corner Henrietta, the head hen who seemed to have taken her role as instigator to heart. I could barely breathe, caught between absolute delight and the concern that we might, in fact, ruin my dreams for Clucktopia along the way. Just as the rumors started swirling about the absolute fall of decorum, the gathering crowd turned towards me, inviting me into the spectacle. "Jas, you need a skit," someone hollered, and I felt the tide of expectation rise as the jester of the Clucktopia dream. I cleared my throat dramatically, drawing my imaginary cape around me, and prepared to take on the heroic role of an unconventional leader in this poultry pandemonium. "Ladies and gentlemen," I called out, my voice booming with a mixture of theatrical flair and impending absurdity, "I present to you the unscripted antics of Chicken Run 2023. Laughter erupted, and suddenly I was on a path to becoming the orchestrator of our own merriment. With every crazy gesture, finger pointing here and there, I channeled the essence of a mad scientist plotting the greatest experiment. A backyard bonanza designed to bridge differences and unite neighbors through laughter. The chickens flailed, my enthusiasm soared, and for a fraction of a moment, the sun shone just a little brighter on our small corner of suburbia. As the neighbors took their places, wading into the chicken chase like seasoned actors thrust into a wild improv performance, I couldn't help but feel prideful. We weren't merely participants. We were shifting paradigms. Karen, forgetting her iron grip on HOA regulations, was now part of the fracas, her usually stern demeanor melting into sheer enjoyment. The sight of her hair, now slightly askew in the wind as she lunged for a particularly escaped hen, was the cherry on top of this sweet absurdity sundae. The cacophony subsided momentarily as I elaborated on this new vision of Clucktopia. This is the kind of spirit that will elevate our community. Chuck the guidelines, toss the gloom, and let us embrace the joy-drenched chaos, I cried, rallying everyone to join in with ludicrous laughter and newfound kinship. We spent what felt like hours groping for chickens, stories intermingling with clucks and chaos as introductions buzzed faster than the flutter of wings. Neighbors lost their inhibitions, uniting with cackles and pant-wetting guffaws, some slipping on wayward feathers like a comical ballet gone awry. A few children took it upon themselves to organize an impromptu Chick-Olympics, urging their peers on with playfully exaggerated cheerleading routines. Even Karen, fueled by laughter and too much soda, found herself cheering for a sprint towards Henrietta, rather than using her usual clipboard to tally property values. Each laugh transformed the atmosphere, sliding the pendulum towards genuine camaraderie instead of the draped veil of judgment. By the time the sun began its descent, the neighborhood had morphed into a glorious amalgamation of goofy glee, where friendship bloomed and laughter drowned out past grievances. The event drew enough attention that I sensed a shift was imminent, one that put property values on the back burner and elevated joy to the forefront of our interactions. Marcus held my hand, watching as even the most staunch skeptics among our neighbors began to embrace the eccentricity. Who would have thought a talent show would kickstart a chicken coup of community spirit, he teased, his eyes twinkling with a mixture of amusement and pride. I grinned back, my heart swelling at the thought that we had toppled the fortress of stoicism that Karen had claimed so ferociously. As our makeshift Clucktopia came to its final drama, I turned to Karen, who was crouched delicately on the grass, affectionately cradling our recently rounded up Henrietta. So, what do you think, Karen? Can we declare our event a spectacular success? My voice dripped with playful challenge, shading the question with just a tinge of sass. She stood up, brushing grass from her blouse, her face a mixture of astonishment and, shockingly, amusement. The barrier had cracked, and in its place was a tiny thread of unexpected companionship. Well, I suppose if a chicken can bypass my zoning laws, who am I to dictate fun? She replied, a smile creeping across her face so slowly, I'm convinced the sun itself was outshone and proud. The evening lingered on as we packed up, laughter still echoing on warm breezes, a sign that perhaps the winds of change had finally begun to shift. What new fun would rise from this feathery frenzy? Thanks for tuning in. It really means a lot to us. If you're still fired up from this HOA showdown, check out our next jaw-dropping battle on the right, or let YouTube surprise you with another wild ride on the left. Take your pick, and I'll see you in the next neighborhood drama.